Clear my throat. Hello, this is Building SEO-Friendly Sites with Drupal. My name is Dan Ficker, and this is BadCamp 2017. So, last day, I think we made it. So, quickly, first I'll get briefly a bit about me. I've been a computer geek for just about forever. A PHP developer for 13 or more years, Drupal developer for 8 years. There's my blog and my Twitter handle, Delirious Guy. I should have these slides up probably on the BadCamp session page shortly after the session. And there's one time I dressed up as in a Halloween costume. If you know what that is or what I'm dressed up as, you know, you get some bonus points. But I also work at a company in Minneapolis, Minnesota called August Ash. And we do kind of a lot of website design, development, internet marketing, and you can go to augustash.com and get more information about that as well. So, just a brief overview of what we plan on talking about today. Just some information about search engine optimization is called SEO. There's a lot of pieces to that, and we'll talk about what those are today, as well as what Drupal provides in Drupal core, what kind of contributed modules that I would say you recommended to have on your website to improve the SEO value or make it easier for your marketing team to kind of add some of these SEO settings without having to edit code and that type of thing. And then maybe some other contributed modules that can also help with some of the marketing and other parts of your website that is kind of related to SEO. And then also, finally, we'll have some questions at the end. But if you do have a question, feel free to yell at me or raise your hand or something. I don't know. First of all, my minor disclaimer is that I'm not really a search engine optimization expert. We at August Ash do have a team of search engine optimization marketing folks, and I do work closely with them on trying to help them, you know, do what they want to do with our Drupal sites. But we're not going to talk today much about keyword research or market analysis, or that's a lot of what search engine optimization folks sometimes do, or very often do. But there are lots of professionals out there. You could talk to probably some of the sponsors here, and we'll talk to more about some other tools that can help you with research and those types of things too, briefly. But we can talk about some basics of SEO first. One thing you definitely talk about, and we'll kind of use these terms throughout the presentation, is keywords. Keywords are just basically your web page is a lot of content, and search engines kind of, and yourself maybe identify some of these keywords that your site will rank for when you search for content. And a lot of really basic SEO is maybe having those important keywords in the page title. In the early days of SEO, at least, having those keywords in various meta tags that say, here are the important keywords, because back in the early days, Google, or before Google and other companies, they didn't really have the ability to index the whole internet. They just indexed the keywords of pages. So most likely you don't need to do, you know, a keyword, but there's also descriptions and that type of thing where you may want to put some keywords just to make it easier for people to see that information in the search results. And we'll talk about how to set those a little bit further. And then, yeah, often you want to have keywords in your header tags and in various important parts of the content to kind of reinforce that those keywords are kind of, you know, the most important part of the page, and that's what you're really talking about. Another thing we'll talk about is it's good to not have duplicate content if you can help it, or at least give some sort of an indication that, you know, this content is kind of a copy of another page over here. That other page over there is maybe the more important part. And so we'll do some of that stuff through redirects of domains, and you know, otherwise search engines like Google are pretty good at figuring out, like, oh, this is actually the earliest version of this content, so we'll probably go there, or this is the most authoritative one because everybody links to this one copy of this content. So another thing we'll talk about too is XML Sitemaps, which is a standard that Google and other search engines use to basically let you send them an XML file that has a list of all the pages on your site. And so then a Drupal module that we'll install, or we can install, will basically automatically update that for you all the time. So Google and the search engines can just come back to that and say, oh, hey, look, there's a new page that I've not seen yet. Let's index a copy of that. So first, we'll start with Drupal 7 core. Apparently this basic core Drupal install was for Twin Cities Drupal Camp a couple years ago. So, and that's why it says TC Drupal test. Always come. You can come to Twin Cities Drupal Camp if you like. It's in the summer. Yeah. First of all, real basic one is in Drupal core. It includes the title of your page, which is usually the main title of your content. Well, let's see. Actually, there's two parts of it. When you're installing Drupal, or in the Drupal config, you set a site name, and then also a page has a title, which is usually also the main header of the page, a main H1 tag. By default, in Drupal core, every page's title is set to the content title plus the site name with a space and a pipe character in between them. And this is great by default because it includes some of the most important information, what your company or your website is and what this page is really about, if you set the page title correctly. Another part that Drupal core includes is, well, let's see. First of all, when you have a node, everything in Drupal is stored in nodes or entities, and all content is usually nodes, and those nodes have a node ID in the database. So by default, every page can be accessed by node/node ID. So node 1, node 2 are those different pages. Within Drupal core functionality, there is an option there to set, if you turn on the path module, if you turn on the path module, there is an option to set an alias to the URL manually. So if it's an About Us page, you can just type in there About, and then for the most part, everywhere in Drupal, it will, instead of linking you to node/1, it will link you to About. And hopefully About is some indication of what the page is about, or something, like about our company. Another part of Drupal that, for the most part, I think is really just a technical implementation thing is clean URLs. Drupal actually Drupal basically actually gets the URL string from a query string. So if you see right here, it says index.php !node/1. That's what actually Drupal's getting from the web browser, or from the web server. But we use some sort of tricks, the default htaccess file in Apache, and some stuff in node.js, Nginx, in the Nginx server to set up some configuration that just kind of hides that. And that's nice because then both visitors and search engines don't have to see index.php q equals at the start of every single page. For the most part, you won't have to worry about this too much. Most web services or web servers, use that htaccess file immediately, or your DevOps team will kind of set that up. And if Drupal's install automatically sees that it's working, it just turns it on right away. It doesn't even make you worry about it at all. But it's something that could become a problem if your configuration is working right. Let's see. Yes, the next thing I would say is Drupal does not really provide anything for this exactly, but we do have some options in the default htaccess file, or you can find configurations for Nginx or IIS that will help you with this. And that's basically a website by default often is available from a number of different places. Maybe if you type in Drupal.org or www.drupal.org, or maybe even something like test.drupal.org, you kind of all get the same site content. Hypothetically, search engines could say, oh, look, this is actually 3 different websites that all have the same stuff. And it can get a little confused into saying, like, oh, you know, this one is the more important version for this page, but another one is the more important version for another page. So what we recommend is that you use HTTP 301 redirects to make sure that they're all going to the same page, or to the same domain, I'm sorry. And the htaccess file for Drupal, if you're using Apache again, has some recommendations on how to do this. Often your hosting company or just searching the internet will give you some other information on how to do that as well. So it's another thing to keep in mind, and we'll talk a little bit more about duplicate URLs on a website as well. Another thing that's useful for search engines is a file called robots.txt that is in the root folder of your website. And this is not required to be there, but if there is something there, search engines will look at that and, for the most part, follow what's in there. Drupal does include a default one that says, hey, don't go into these certain admin pages and things. You're probably not going to find anything useful there anyway. It's not content, and it's not something that is really anything that search engines should be looking at. It used to be that we would also sometimes put in JavaScript and CSS files in there, although now things have changed, and Google really likes to see those JavaScript and CSS files because it's getting smarter and smarter, and might take over the world someday. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, if you are using a staging site or a test site and you don't want it to be indexed by any search engine, put this last couple lines here: user agent asterisk disallow / and that means basically don't ever index anything on this page, pretty much, or anything on this site. You can do a lot more with the robots.txt if you find that there's other weird search engines or things that image crawler systems that you don't really want taking copies of your stuff or something. I've also seen cases where search engines can get confused if like a complicated view or something that actually has like a bunch of different URL pieces, and it can get confused and try to index hundreds or thousands of versions of these pages and results, and actually spend like kind of days crawling your site with these thousands of pages. And that there's another in the robots.txt file, just say don't go into this section, and therefore sometimes you can also fix the view to not do that or something. But that's one way to tell them, like, this is not really for you. Maybe your customers still visit that page and browse it and use it in a regular way to kind of search or index information. But if it's just kind of a listing of content to some extent, the search engine should, via other methods, know where the actual content is and not really need to keep copies of all these lists of content, really. But that's up to maybe the developers or the marketing team to say, hey, we don't want all this information there. But you can put that in the robots.txt file if you want. That's mostly all the stuff that comes with Drupal core. And now we're going to talk about a few Drupal modules that you can add onto your site. The most well-known one is a module called Path Auto. It also requires the token module, and we'll talk about that right now, actually. Yeah. And so the token module is a way to use a bunch of these little bracketed text tokens, little pieces of information that say, well, in this case it says bracket node : title, and it says from the current node that is on this page, I want the title of that node. So what happens with Path Auto is, like I said earlier, in Drupal core you can set an alias or a version of that path. If you turn on the Path Auto module, it will automatically set an alias for content / and then the title of the page. If your page is about us, about your company, then it will be content / about - us is what the Path Auto system will automatically put out there. But it gives you a lot more options because you can log into the administration area, the settings for the Path Auto module, and say, actually, this is the default, content / node : title, but you can say for this certain type of node, your picture or your event, for an event, say, actually put it under, events / title event. For blog posts, if you really want to, you can make some sort of a hierarchy that says /blog /2017 /10 / the title of your post. So included in that would also be kind of the title and the date of your post.
You prefer questions at the end as you go?
I could take a question, I guess. I might cover it later, but we'll see.
Well, that's why I asked. It has to do specifically with Path Auto and the usage of it, and optimizing for what search engines would most prefer. So in other words, do search engines actually care every page's website / name of page, or do search engines actually prefer to get that /event / name of event? Does it care at all?
I don't think the search engines really care. I think it can help convey some information, like event or something like that is a keyword to some extent that has to do with that page. So it also maybe does give them maybe some information on, this is actually a sub-page of the events section per se. But yeah, I don't know if I don't think it really matters, but I think it, URLs and how they're organized is, you can do it a lot of different ways, and I think it all will still work. I think just maybe there is a little bit of, extra keywords that could be in there. One way you can, if you want to really work with Path Auto, you could include like the category of the post or something like that, which also may be an important keyword. And so I think that can be helpful to organize your information as well as get some of those keywords into the search engines. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great answer.
So you can customize it for each content type. Path Auto also creates automatic paths, creates these automatic things for taxonomy term pages and user entities. I think by default it's /user / the username instead of a user ID is the default. Let's see. Yeah, it does a number of other things, like translates spaces into dashes or hyphens. Drops common words like a and the in the title before, or in any of your fields really, before putting those into the path. And again, underneath the configuration page here, you can find a lot more information or a lot more options. You can customize a lot of that too. And that's what I said. Really, to answer your question, is really just to have more of the keywords of describing what this page is in the URL, and that's what Path Auto can provide. So, I will talk a little bit about URLs overall. I always find that they should really be kind of organized somewhat intelligently. If there is a hierarchy to the information, that they should be like that it should be conveying some of that hierarchy. If you have an About Us section and then staff underneath that, I would say it's About -us /staff would maybe be the page. It also tells search engines maybe, but also users, like this is the About Us section of the site, this is staff, the staff page, and if you go to the About Us section, you'll find more generic information about our company. I would say, it should convey some meaning. I would also like to say that for those who really like to look at the URL of the page, it should be I say hackable, which I think I've heard somebody say that before. That's where I probably got that. But for example, like in this one, it says blog/2017/10/sample-post. I would expect if you just got rid of the sample-post part and went to blog/2017/10, you would get a list of all of the blog posts from October 2010 or 2017 or October 2017, yeah. And then maybe if you got rid of the /10 part, you'd get all the blog posts from 2017 or a list of all of them. And /blog is probably just your most recent posts. If you have a lot of these different slashes and things, and then there's nothing actually up there above that, or you go to any of those blog/2017 and you just get the most recent 5 blog posts, it doesn't really give as much information to the users and potentially the search engine as well. So maybe if you don't actually there's a little bit of work to maybe make a view that displays those different things, or write some code to do that. But I think it's probably worth it, or maybe just don't do all that and really just make it so that it just has the blog post in the title, and not kind of a really fancy looking URL with a lot of different folders or pieces to it. The next module I'd recommend that you use on a lot of sites is a module called Redirect. Because if you're using something like Path Auto, and you're using the title of the post to be the URL, if someone actually changes the title of the post, then it changes what the URL for the page is. And if you don't have something like the redirect module involved, then the old URL that people used to be going to is no longer going to work. It's just going to give you a 404 page. Somebody might have linked to that on Twitter. The search engines were looking at that before, and now they don't know where to go. And so the redirect module, if you turn this on, download this and install it, it will basically provide you a whole system for kind of redirecting various things. One of the things it will do automatically is when a path does change like that, it will just create a redirect from the old path that's no longer valid to the newest updated path. And that's the big majority of it. Yes?
Simple question. Is this more complicated than merely a wrapper around an HTTP redirect? I mean, is there some intelligence in the module? There's a little bit. No, I mean, it does send an HTTP response that says, redirect over to here. I think what really is the benefit is a few things. There is an administration interface where you can add your own custom redirects to it, as well as, like I said, when a path does change, just along with changing other content, that it will basically notice that a path has changed and create a redirect for you automatically. There is options in there too. You can change, there's a couple different HTML codes, like a permanent redirect, a temporary redirect, a number of other things that you could also set for a redirect. Yes, your web server or something before Drupal could also be doing these types of redirects. I'm just saying it's got a more user-friendly interface.
Yes. I mean, one thing that we often do is install the redirect module right when we're launching a site, go through, or even before we launch the site, go through the previous live site that another company made or we made years ago, and say, these are the top couple pages, if it's a small site, or maybe even go through and kind of make sure that those old URLs still work. Don't go to a 404 page, but add the redirects right in there so you can easily edit them. You could also, put them inside the server configuration file or some sort of redirect outside of Drupal. But, yeah.
I realize this isn't a bird's feather. I just want to interject that the auto redirect can have problems. Like, you can create issues. Particularly if you're doing a migration and you're moving over a lot of content from another, and you can actually create a situation where you change the name of a page twice and it'll create an endless loop. would actually redirect to itself over and over. And I don't know, they may have fixed that.
I think they fixed that.
Yeah, we had a couple of years ago in Drupal 7. There are a lot of issues where that would happen, where you changed it to about/us, and then back to about, and the redirect system kind of, for performance reasons, runs pretty early in the Drupal loading process, and so it would always kick in before anything else, and so it kind of redirected to itself over and over again, or back and forth. Now I believe it does a better job of detecting that. It used to, just in Drupal 7 at least, detect it when you were logged in as an admin and throw you a little message. But now I think it does a good job of detecting those, and now there's an option to actually disable redirects in at least Drupal 7. It's probably in Drupal 8 as well.
Yeah.
But
I kind of figured they did fix it because I hadn't run into it in so long. I figured it was probably...
Yeah, for a little while, in my early version of this presentation, there was like here's a patch to patch the module to do redirects better. Yes?
Do you know, is there any performance disadvantage to using this over just including the redirects in the htaccess file?
I think obviously, I think the htaccess file or some sort of configuration in the server means that you don't even have to load Drupal's database and look up a redirect. Say, is there a redirect for this path? Which is, like I said, it goes pretty quickly, but it's still not as fast as that probably, just doing it directly in the server configuration. So, I would say you're right. Like, putting the configuration would be a little faster. The reason, maybe, like I said, for him was, you can edit the redirects and add more kind of within the Drupal admin interface with this type of tool. So, sometimes our clients will say, the main URL for the page is about dash us, but we'd also like about to work, or we send out a flyer or mailer that just says go to oursite.com/a, and it will redirect you to the full about page, or whatever marketing page or blog post. So there's the redirects can do a lot for you in that type of situation. Yes, there's another module here that's only really for Drupal 7 at this point, called Global Redirect, and I'm going to talk a little bit about why that can be helpful. It's really kind of all about making sure you don't have this kind of duplicate content situation as well. Again, most of the time the search engines, I think, are pretty good at realizing that this is some sort of duplicate content and deciding this is a good spot for it, but this can also help. This functionality I'm told is included in Drupal 8's redirect module itself. I think for a long time there's kind of been an issue with it in Drupal 7, so it is kind of still a separate module. But basically, as I show here, if your main page is about-me, it could also be accessible from node/1 about-me/ with a slash on the end, and also this question mark equals about-me, or index.php !q equals about-me, or whatever. So a lot of different options there. What Global Redirect basically does is takes all of those options that don't look as pretty and sets a 301 redirect to the main one. Again, it's kind of a small thing. Most of the time, people are going to get to that link that is to about-me. And if somehow the search engines did see any of these other ones without Global Redirect on it, would probably say, oh, look, this just looks like a copy of that other page. But just to be clear for everyone, I guess, then it makes sure that those pages are the official one. I think also some of these might not be needed, like some Nginx configurations often strip out the last slash if there is one. And that type of thing. But just make sure, this helps make sure that all your links are linked to the right spot. So, now we'll talk a little bit about meta tags. And meta tags, this also uses the token module, which lets you kind of reuse data from other fields like like we saw with the Path Auto system. And let's see, it can be, yeah, so by default, if you turn on Metatag, it does some really basic information, like says, the page title will work the same way. There's a meta description tag that the search engines use for kind of a basic couple line description of the site. If your node has a summary field, it will use that information by default. But it can set a lot of other things. It also sets a canonical URL as the main URL alias. And you can also, through this Metatag system, Metatags are usually these small little tags that are in the head of the page that you don't really see, but the search engines can look at and get information. So there is options in there for the robots. Is another thing. A robots tag also tells search engines, just for this page, don't actually index this, or don't follow all the links on this page to find new pages, or that type of thing. So there are also kind of sub-modules for the Metatag module for Twitter cards, Open Graph, Facebook, that type of stuff. So if you want to customize a little further what image shows up when someone links onto your links to a page of your site with Facebook or Twitter, you can kind of customize that and say, yes, put this field's URL in there or something like that. And yeah.
Before you move on, this I just want to make sure I really understand this, because this could be hugely helpful for my users.
Yeah, sure.
Is it possible to use Metatag? I thought it said you could use this to sort of override the title, the page's title. So
yeah.
The question I get asked a lot, because some of our programs have really, really long titles, which in each one look really bad on the page, right?
Sure.
They ask me, will I kill my SEO if I use an acronym? And my answer is yes, because your acronym is not going to mean anything to Google, right? Because it's not a common acronym, right?
Yeah.
But if the meta tag could actually kind of override that H1 and allow Google to actually understand, forget what it says in the H1 tag, the meta tag says the title of this page is X, that could solve the problem. So do I understand this correctly? Or?
Yeah, I think that's a good take on that. I think so. There's a number of options of what the Metatag module can do, and we'll see if this answers your question.
Okay.
So, yeah, by default, it kind of is set up with a couple things, and you can set, say, for this node type or this kind of content type, again, use this kind of token system. So right there, it's kind of small, but it says, the page title is, like we said before, kind of the title of the page and the title of this, or the name of the site. For just event nodes, you could actually just say, for any event type, you could say, actually it'll be this kind of pattern instead, which would be the title, and then maybe events or company events, or you could use maybe another field that is like a shorter version or something, if you have that on every single piece of that content type. But then there's some basic information like description, abstract. If you click on advanced, there's, like I said, a lot of those options like Twitter cards and robots, and you can change the settings for the canonical URL or those kind of things. But this also is this is a screenshot of what it actually looks like on a actual Pages edit screen. This is a Drupal 7 edit thing. It will show up in the side tabs, I think, on Drupal 8. But so on that actual page, if you have permission to see the Metatag information, you could actually just type in whatever page title you want, and it will just on that page, show that information. So you can really be you can use kind of the token system and the defaults to provide a somewhat smart default, or if you really want to get very specific, you can basically write your own title for every single page, or write your own description for every single page. So I think that gives you a number of options.
Yeah, that definitely answers my question. And the only last part of it I would ask is, can I use the token for the path for that path part of it, and then just remove that last token and override that acronym with the full spelled out? Would that work?
Yeah, that would work. So yeah, you can use a combination of you could use
it says browse available tokens there. It'll give you a list of, almost hundreds of tokens probably that you can use of various fields on your page or various information that's all across the site. But then you don't even have to use the tokens if you don't want to. You can just say, yeah, I'm going to write in my whole page title, and it might not even include the company name, which maybe I wouldn't recommend that, but you could definitely do it. And it would be nice. I mean, I don't think it shows right there, but there is a certain limit of how long a page title is recommended to be. So, and it's probably 300, 400 characters or something at the most. So, don't make it too long. Is a good point. So, there are a couple other Drupal 7 modules. The Metatag module was not really like the first Drupal 7 module that did meta tags. So, I don't know if I'd recommend using these, but they can be used. If you want to just really set page titles, there is a separate page title module. And it doesn't do any other meta tags, just the page title. There's also the meta tags quick module. It's interesting, I guess, just because it actually creates actual entity fields for each of the things. The reason I don't like it, you have a separate field for the description. It doesn't use the token system, so it doesn't actually it doesn't actually, if you have a body or some field set already, it doesn't automatically put in description. You have to basically specify your page, your title and description, and all those items using the meta tags quick module. But some people may like the fact that it uses the field storage instead of kind of its own little database storage system. So that's another option. Let's see. Those, I think, are really kind of a lot of the Drupal 7 and 8 modules that I really would recommend. I'm not sure, you probably don't want to install all the modules, and that's what it would look like if you installed all the modules. But here's a couple other things that could be useful. I think this is actually something that the Swiss Army people actually do sell. It's like all 50 or 60, little add-ons for a Swiss Army knife or something. But I don't think I'd ever buy that. Can't fit in your pocket very well. One module that could be helpful for some users is the Google Analytics module. If you're not familiar with Google Analytics, it is a free tool for getting a lot of information about who's visiting your site and how they're visiting your site and that type of information. You just basically sign up for an account with Google, and they give you a little snippet of JavaScript code. In this case, you actually don't even need much of the snippet of JavaScript code. There's usually just it's UA dash 5 or 6 numbers. You just need that little account code, and you just pop it in, turn on this module, and go to the configuration page, pop in the code, and that's all you really need. It does include a couple extra things, like it'll kind of log events when you click on a file download or going to a remote site. So if you want really that information about where are they, what links are they clicking on to your site, from your site to go to other sites, you can actually get some of that information. There's a couple options in there that they say don't even recommend doing because it could log IP addresses of visitors and that type of thing, which is kind of a privacy concern to some extent. But so there's a bunch of options that you don't automatically get by just sticking that JavaScript in there, that you can play around with within the Google Analytics module. This is one that we've used on Drupal 7 a little bit, is a module called Tracking Code. It's not the really fanciest module in the world, but if your search engine marketing people really want to add some sort of advertising tracking information, or just a little snippet of JavaScript code to the head or body of a page, they can basically through the administration interface add this stuff. I would say actually, so all these modules overall, I don't recommend you install all of them. It's probably overkill. But if you really have a need for, some of our clients definitely say we have another SEO company and they want FTP access to the site. And I say, well, FTP is very old and outdated. We don't really want you to have that. But here, you can log into the site and you can edit the content right here. You can edit the meta tags right here. And then they don't need kind of, that kind of file level access to the site. And so these kind of modules can help you with that. The tracking code module is pretty basic. Yeah, you can put a piece of JavaScript in, say I want it to show up on these node types or these path types, and the paths that match. There's kind of like the block settings to say it can show up on this page or this page or this page, or not on these pages. I guess this tracking code module is not really available for Drupal 8. They kind of recommend you use another thing called Asset Injector, which I've not really used, but that was listed on the tracking code page. There's other tools such as Google Tag Manager is one that Google provides, where you can do a lot of this similar thing. You just put a piece of JavaScript from Google into your pages, and then on Google's admin interface you can say like, for this path, or in this case, show this little piece of JavaScript somewhere on the page. So.
Yeah, I just want to interject that we are using Asset Injector, and it does work. So
okay.
So you can take the maybe out.
All right, good.
It
good.
works, and it also works for CSS, which is also very handy.
Yeah, that could be handy. I noticed it did a little bit more than this thing does.
It's really great for quick fixes in between your pushes. Yeah.
All right, cool. But yeah, like I said just a little bit ago though too. It's like a lot of these modules. Every time you add another module to your site, it does make your site a little bit slower, probably. So to some extent, don't install every single module that you ever heard of, because it can make your site kind of slow. So just the ones you really need, and that's kind of a trade-off there. Do you need this? Do you not need it? A few more things we got. I think we have time. Yeah, the XML Sitemap module. Like I said earlier, this is a list, XML file or set of files that list all of the pages on your site. Google and there's an open stand basically that says it's an XML format or XML file with this format. It just pretty much lists all the URLs. It can list information like approximately how often these things are updated, and or when it was last updated. And Google does know that, or Drupal, sorry, does know that information. So it basically through the Drupal's cron and that type of thing actually keeps kind of an updated list of what is there, and basically then there's a certain file you give Google. I think it's usually sitemap.xml, and then them or any search engines can just find all the information of here's all of the pieces of content on your website. It does take a little bit setting up. You do have to actually go into all your different content types, or maybe menu items, taxonomy terms, user profiles, if you want all that type of information in Google, and say yes. I think by default everything's excluded usually, so don't show everything. So you have to turn on pieces of it. Sometimes if you have a node that's really just kind of a chunk of content or a thing, you don't really want to. It's not really there is actually sometimes a page that just has an image or something on it, and you don't really want to tell Google, hey, this is an important page, because it's not really. It's a piece of content that you use maybe on another page. So there are reasons maybe not to have everything included, but you basically have to go in per content type and say, yes, I want this information. You can set a little bit of a priority thing that says this is somewhat important or not. Especially on Drupal 8's version of this module, I found it's not perfect yet. You do have to a couple times usually clear the cache a couple times, and maybe also use its function to kind of say rebuild all of the sitemap links. Usually after I turn it on and enable a couple content types, I still have to run this rebuild function in order before it actually starts showing me a page. Showing me this XML file when you go to the URL. There is options, a little submodule that will automatically send it, send a request to Google or Bing or places to say, hey, we got an updated sitemap here, so you should check it out. The other way you can do that, and we'll talk about it in a second, is called Google Search Console. This is another little piece of Drupal 7 module called Site Verify. Various sites or systems, including Google Search Console, other services require you to put a meta tag or a little file on your server. If you don't want to put a file on your server, this could be one way to do it. You install this module, you can upload a file right into your admin, and usually it's just a little snippet of code that says, hey, I have this key to verify that you are who you say you are, or your account is associated with this website. And so that's one way to handle that. Otherwise, you can just actually put the file in the server,
and make sure that it can be viewed publicly. This brings us to, used to be called Google Webmaster Tools. It's now called Google Search Console. And basically, it's just a nice tool from Google that says, here's all of the information that we see, and maybe here's some ideas on how to make it better. Let's see, yeah, and you can see it in the small in the corner a little bit, but it says we have a sitemap, and we see a sitemap, and we see 434 different URLs in that sitemap, and we're indexing most of them. But it also, gives you some information, the sections in there. You have to do kind of a first verification, like I mentioned, to say, yes, this is my site, and I actually do own this site. But once you do that, you can get a lot of information from Google, and they can even kind of contact you through a little inbox in the system and say, we noticed there's some, malware on your site, so you might want to fix that, or something like that. So that's, I think, all I just mentioned there. And I think we're probably out of time, aren't we?
That's lunchtime, don't worry about it.
All right, well, yeah, and then one little thing I would recommend, or I would mention too, is another module called SEO Checklist. It doesn't really actually do much of anything as far as configuration or improvements to your site. It's provided by a guy named Ben Finkley of Veloci, I believe, and they're a search engine company that does mostly Drupal. And it's basically just a long checklist of saying, you should do this. And it does a lot of those same things I mentioned in this presentation, but it might also have a couple other smaller things. And it just really gives you, in your administration panel, kind of an option to say, here's a bunch of things that would be good for SEO on your site. So, this one actually, I forgot I had this in here. It's called Search 404. I believe it's probably only a Drupal 7 module. This is an option I'm not sure if I recommend either, but it's kind of an interesting one. Is instead of your regular 404 not found page, it would basically take the pieces of the URL and run them through the Drupal search system and say, oh, yeah, you were searching for about us. It doesn't seem to exist, but here's a bunch of pages that have the words about us in them. I wonder if this, could be a little bit of an issue, I guess, for some things. But David,
one feature that I like about this that's not enabled by default is if it does a page not found and it does a search and only one result's found. If it's enabled, it can automatically redirect to that page for you.
Okay, yeah. So I think overall, if you with the redirect module, it does come with a page that says, here's a bunch of 404s, and here's an easy way, just add a redirect here, and I think overall it's better to add the redirect if you can, if you know that this is where this page should go. So maybe occasionally monitor your 404s, errors that are logged into your Drupal site, and make sure that people are getting to the right place, if there is a page that is the right place. But this can be helpful as an option too, to just help them find what used to be somewhere else and is not there anymore.
That's awesome.
Yes, question? Yes, I will put my slides up on the Badcamp session page here shortly.
Very much.
So, I have not done them yet. Oh, this is another Drupal 7 module called Link Checker. It actually, through Drupal cron, does actually, check, look through the content on your website and make sure there's no links to external websites or pages on your site that don't work anymore. There are a lot of other tools out in the world that could also do this. Like web services and things that you could say, hey, look through all my websites, see if you find any broken links. But it's another option. I don't think there's a Drupal 8 version. Yeah. And that's really all I had. So it's called Link Checker. So I think that's really all I had. But if you have any questions, feel free to either ask or come up and ask me. And otherwise, have lunch.
3 slides back.
What's that?
Could you please go 3 slides back?
Oh, a couple of slides back. Let's see. This one?
No more.
This one?
One more.
One more.
Yeah, thank you.
Google/Webmasters, yes.
I'm
Google
jealous.
Search Console.
I got 2 Pantheon shirts, but no Pantheon socks.
So you got to be an employee.
Pantheon socks?
Thank
Ooh,
you.
wow.
So about your
You're welcome.
Your clients asking about can I change acronyms and stuff technically, yeah.
You probably want to push it again.
But with SEO, it's kind of like